What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see from the title of this video, this is an Avatar: The Way of the Water spoiler discussion. So this is assuming you've seen all 3 hours and 10-15 minutes of the James Cameron sequel to the highest grossing film of all time, Avatar, that came out 13 years ago. It's crazy. There's some times there I didn't know if we were going to be back in Pandora, but here we are discussing it, and I'm very excited to be here with you all. I'm not alone. I have a very special guest. I'm going to bring it in here shortly. Before we bring in our guest, if you all can do me a favor, hit the thumbs up, share this video, as well as share your thoughts on Avatar: The Way of the Water in the comments. What worked, what didn't work, favorite moments, least favorite moments, character, story, direction. Are you excited for Avatar 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe on and on and on? Are you not excited? And everything in between, let us know in the comments below. With all that being said, I'm so excited to be bringing our guest in. He's been on the channel before. I've been on his channel as well, but it's been a minute since we talked about a movie and a movie of this stature, which is Avatar. I'm so excited to be bringing him back. You know him, you love him. I'm talking about my man Griffin from Film Speak. What's going on, man?
Dude, what's going on, dude? Great to be back here. Thanks again for having me. It's been far too long, and I always love talking about these things with you. So it's I'm stoked, man, because I feel like Avatar 2 was like one of those projects where, you know, so many people kind of like laughed at the idea of it, and yet like over the past couple of months, everyone's sort of become like the world's the biggest Avatar stans like imaginable. And like
It's crazy.
I get it, you know. Like that trailer is really like enticing. It's a damn good trailer, but it's just kind of funny. It's like, where were you guys a couple of years ago, huh? Now you're big Avatar fans.
Now you jump on the bandwagon, and being honest, and we'll talk about James Cameron here. He's made it a bit hard to get excited too with some of the comments he said about other franchises. But hey, he's the king of franchise. He's the king of sequels, man. He can say wherever he wants to. Right. And we'll talk about if he lived up to the expectations, Griff. But before we get into the conversation, man, just in case this is their first time seeing you, why don't you let them know who you are, where they can find your content, man?
Yeah, well, I'm sponsored by Huel. No, I'm just kidding. You can find me over on the Film Speak channel, where I do a bunch of video essays, deep dives into, you know, the latest and greatest in terms of like films and television. I just put out that's interesting. I don't know what that was. But I just put out a video on Andor a couple of days ago that I'm really proud of. So if you're a big fan of Andor, like me, like a big Rogue One fan, you'll probably find that enjoyable. And then depending on when this video is coming out, I should have my video on Avatar 2, The Way of the Water, out, like, you know, by the time you're watching this. But I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and if you like diving into film, like me, very analytical and all that good stuff, you can check me out and my thoughts over on the Film Speak channel.
Yes, sir. And I am, Griff, man, I hate to say it, man, I am behind on Andor, and I was one of those people that loved the first 3 episodes. So much stuff, man. As you know, this is the perfect time of the year with all the critic screenings, and it's like a million things you got to catch up on. But Andor is on top of my list, my friend, because I love the first 3 episodes. I hear from people like you and other people that watch Star Wars and love Star Wars that this is a show you must watch, and I plan on watching it, man. And, speaking of must watching, Griff, this film, Avatar 2, The Way of the Water, my friend, I think the first thing I want to kind of dive into, and as far as this discussion, guys, is Avatar 2009, Griff. Were you a fan? Were you one of those people that loved it when you first saw it? Then as time went by, you're like, you know what? This movie was stupid, man. This movie is rinse, recycle, repeat of all the other stories. Where do you stand with that film and leading into excitement for this sequel?
Yeah, I feel like most people, I've kind of gone through like hurdles with Avatar. Like there were times where I was kind of in love with it, and there were other times when I feel like maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of it, or maybe not even like the biggest fan, but I was just like, oh, I'm not like as bananas as some of the hardcore fans are as it comes to it. But what my initial reaction to the film when I saw it was like, oh yeah, wow, this is a fantastic movie. I'm a big fan of what James Cameron was trying to do here, and like I get it. And I don't know, just like being in that world was really special. And so like while like I guess my, you know, some moods you kind of favor it, or some days you favor the film more than others. Like you know, we've all kind of gone through that with some of with you know, many movies. Across all of that, I've generally always been a fan of this film, particularly like James Cameron's directing. I just think that it's, you know, he takes a story that or a kind of story that we're familiar with, and he uses that as a way to introduce us to this whole new world, to take us on just like this really epic story that actually has a lot to say, you know, like I think especially at the time when people weren't necessarily taking climate change as seriously as they should have. I mean, this is like right around the time that like An Inconvenient Truth was coming out, and that was like kind of a controversial documentary at the time. Or well, I mean, this was like obviously a couple of years after that, but still it was around that, you know, that early 2000s era. And then also like it was in the thick of the Iraq war, and so like I think the movie kind of also touches on a lot of aspects of colonialism and 100%. Just like wars fought over resources, and so and then just like being able to like see someone for who they are, and respect the world that we all live in. I mean, the tagline of the like thing throughout the movie is like, I see you, and it's about like trying to see the other person for who they are and whatnot, not just like your agenda. So I've always like appreciated, and it's like we all know James Cameron he's someone who he's unafraid of like speaking his mind. He's very brash, and he's not like necessarily trying to be like tactile and how he approaches the message. Just like, you know, if he wants to say something, he's not going to beat around the bush. He's just going to tell you how he's feeling. And I love that about the film. And I think, you know, regardless of whether or not you find the messaging heavy-handed, I find the journey to be enjoyable. And so, yeah, like going into The Way of Water, like it wasn't necessarily something where I was like in my head, like, oh God, I can't wait for Avatar 2. I mean, like, over the years, like I feel like after that initial one, and I'm sure you probably felt similar, after that initial one, I was excited for like what are they going to do next? Like what's going to happen with this? And then, like,
the technology.
It's like that, because that's what we expect from James Cameron. But then like the project kind of went dormant, and so I was just sort of like, I guess just like it just like left my mind because other stuff was coming out that I was more excited about. And so when they announced that it was finally coming out, I was like, oh, cool. I mean, like I will be curious to see what all of this time, you know, how it's been spent. And then we get that first trailer, and I'm like, boom, I'm in, man. I'm hooked. I love the vibes. I love just like it really made me realize how magical Pandora is and how much I missed that.
That's the word.
Like that's like, it's just that the if you are a fan of that trailer, you'll like the film basically, or just like a fan of the original Avatar. But it is one of those things where it was just like, oh yeah, no, this is really such a great, just like property, a franchise. I'm like so excited for his sequels.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. I was in the same boat. 2009, I was still a teenager. I saw the film 3 or 4 times in 3D, and obviously that was just during that time. It reshaped, you know, the industry. You know, all the 3D TVs, movies coming out 3D. I mean, it was a cultural, impactful film for many different reasons. And as time went by, as you said, you know, you can kind of fall in love with it, kind of fall out of love with it, and as you mentioned, 13 years have went by. We've been spoiled with other films, especially in the visual effects department, whether it be a Marvel, even though James Cameron has his thoughts on some of the Marvel visual effects, but Marvel, DC, Star Wars, other films that have really kind of pushed the envelope with technology. And you kind of forget about what made Pandora so special. So I definitely agree with you there, man. And as far as excitement level for the second one, I was, as you said, as the years went by and the time went by, you kind of forget about it, which is crazy to say, considering this is the highest, well, for the many, many years between this and Avengers and Endgame, and eventually it, you know, championed them and became the highest grossing film officially of all time. And you're like, man, this is the highest grossing film of all time. And I'm just like, the sequel. We'll see what happens.
It was one of those weird anomalies, right? Where it's like, oh, what's the highest grossing film of all time? It's like, oh, it's Avatar. That's weird. And there was a period of time when like Endgame took over that spot that I was actually like, I was like, yeah, that feels right. This cultural juggernaut that's been going on since like 2008.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, if there's gonna be a movie to be the #1 highest grossing film of all time, Avengers Endgame feels right. And then after like, you know, some of the phase 4 shenanigans happened, and I just kind of like my enthusiasm for the MCU is sort of waned a bit. I was like, Nah, there was something special about this weird little random blockbuster, original
Non-franchise,
blockbuster.
exactly,
Exactly.
non-franchise blockbuster. Movie
Non-franchise
Doors Up the Water.
blockbuster
Yep.
from the mind of James Cameron being the highest grossing film of all time. There was something about that that just felt right. And I was
Yeah.
like, and it was just like really cool. And like
Mhm.
the cultural phenomenon surrounding that movie in 2009, it was just like
Crazy, man.
that. We've never seen anything like it before. And
Right.
I mean, I don't know if we'll see that with the sequels, probably not, but like
Yeah.
I just I loved the fact that that was the highest grossing film of all time, and I'm actually I've kind of like pivoted to the side where I'm like I'm happy that this is
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You know,
No, I hear
it's
you,
just
man. I hear you. And it's just jumping right into it, man. I guess it's kind of the next thing that's pivot over. We've mentioned him quite a
sure.
few times, and I guess just jumping right into Mr. James Cameron himself, the director and co-writer of this film. And I wanted to kind of pivot into this, Griff. One of the
Mm,
positives with me in this film, and nothing again, not knocking the first Avatar, but James Cameron is just a sole writer of the first Avatar, which again we
yeah,
talked about. Some people talk about the story feel familiar, which sometimes when you're visiting this new world and universe, sometimes you got to have some familiar beats so you can have that familiarity when you're going into this brand new type of experience. So, but he was the writer, and there was some issues with some of the script. But this time around, Griff, there's a video that's floating around online. I think Screen Rant interviewed James Cameron where he said in
mhm,
2017 he had 800 pages of notes of what really worked with Avatar and maybe what didn't
mhm,
work, and he gave the writers room homework to do. So to me, Griff, starting with you, I think one of the best things James Cameron did with this film was have other writers in the room, because I think for me, as we'll talk about, this story to me was way more memorable, impactful, and way more layered than the original one. So just your thoughts on how James Cameron approached this sequel, and do you feel as though
yeah.
him allowing others to have their voice in room really expanded this world and gave you a fun journey?
Yeah, I definitely think the writers room helped in a lot of ways. I don't think that it's weird because it's like it still feels like a James Cameron written movie. And
Right.
I don't know
Right.
if we'll ever get away from that just because his stamp is so distinct and
Yeah.
prominent, like regardless of what the thing is. But I think by bringing in other writers, he was able to tackle certain things a bit more
Yeah.
in a bit more of a with a bit more nuance than perhaps he would have been able to do had he did it himself.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's like while his messaging is still like really confronting, like it's not like these subtle undertones. I
Mhm.
do think he was able to weave in a bit more subtlety because of the writers that he brought on board. And I echo your sentiment. I think this is a much better script
Yeah.
than the first one. Again, it's not like it's reinventing the wheel or anything, but it is kind of in the same vein as like Aliens or T2.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why those films worked as well and why James Cameron has been the sequel king for as long as he has been is because his approach to sequels isn't to go bigger, it's to go deeper, right? You go
Yeah.
more
Perfect pun there,
introspective
Griff, especially with
with the
water. Yeah.
yeah,
Water.
right, with the water. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's to be a bit more introspective. It's to
Yeah.
explore these characters and their relationships from the inside out. And I think eh, yeah, while still, giving people what they liked about that first one, which if you were to ask me is the world. It's the world building and just like the creatures, the culture, the immersiveness, which he's obviously been able to, dial up to like a million in this film. And I don't even know what the sequels are going to look like. It's going to be
Oh my
insane.
goodness. Yeah.
But like, yeah, like so he's able to improve what everyone liked about that first film and then take the characters and the writing and make it a bit more intimate. And
Yep.
so while the scope of the film is just like all encompassing, like just fucking massive all over the place,
Yep.
it feels a bit smaller in a way. And I kind of like that because it
Yeah.
makes the stakes more personal. And so, and to your point, I think he was able to achieve that balance with the writing team. He
100%.
knew where he wanted to go.
Yep.
And I also think he just needed to assemble a team of writers to just feasibly do 5 movies. And
Exactly.
I'm assuming
No
that
easy
like
task.
they're on board, yeah,
Yeah.
for like all 5. So it's
All
like,
5. Yep.
yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, I think it was a smart move, and it definitely worked in the film's favor for sure.
100%. Number one, I think, as you just mentioned on the last point, I would think he would assemble a team to build this franchise out. From what I read the other day, he has plans for up to 7 to Avatar 7. So I would imagine that would be a
Dude.
lot of work for one person to write all that, do all that. So you said it beautifully, where that is such a huge undertaking to, number one,
Yeah.
push the envelope for the technology and push the envelope for the scope and scale of what a blockbuster can be. And to have someone and have multiple people helping you through the process had to be just like a huge thing that he can lean on, while he can, he can focus on what makes James Cameron's film so rich and fun and entertaining, and also have a lot of nuance, but also it allows him to, really hone in on what you just mentioned, man. The visuals in this film, and we have these hyperboles. This is the best thing ever. This is the masterpiece. It's the greatest. But literally, Griffin, I can honestly say, man, on my 30 plus years on this earth, I've never seen anything like this before. And this is even in the same vein of, being in the generation that was able to be exposed to the first Avatar.
Yeah.
The visual effects, Griff, on this one, seen it in IMAX 3D. I've seen it twice now. One was in 24 frames. Another one was 48. I much more prefer the 24.
Oh, damn.
frames.
So you saw it twice?
I saw it twice. Yeah, I got the opportunity to see it
Holy
twice.
shit. I'm jealous.
And so I had to go to Pandora, man. I had to go back. I couldn't get enough of it, Griff. But seeing it twice, man, it's just a visual experience, immersive experience like I've never, ever experienced before. And I think that's due to the part, too, again, that James Cameron was able to really solely focus on not only telling the story, but also giving us this type of experience that he promised us 13 years in the making, man.
Oh, absolutely. I think if there's anything that people have been saying that, we can learn from this, is that you don't bet against James Cameron. It's just like the confidence of this guy is just like, I wish I had just like a fraction of the confidence that he has, to the point where it's just like, no, I know if I like it, a lot of people are going to like it. And like, so
telling executives to get the F out of here. I know what I'm doing. I'm the one that's paying your check and having you buy your house from Malibu.
But I love it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's stuff that I think would turn a lot of people off of him, but it's just, it's a really refreshing kind of demeanor, and just like, I don't know, it's great. But to your point, I think I've never seen anything like this before. I can understand why some people may struggle with the high frame rate. I mean, look, it took me a little bit to get used to as well.
Yeah.
And I saw it. I don't know what format you saw it in, but I saw it in Dolby 3D with the high frame rate.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. And I think I'm gonna go see it in IMAX this Thursday or something like that. So I'll be curious to see like how that compares to the Dolby experience. But it's kind of similar to the first one. It's just this like movie you just kind of fall into. He just like there's like some of his like camera work in there, but it's just like all encompassing. You're just like, you're looking around, and it's just like the most interesting thing might not be the people or the creatures that are right in front of you. There might be just like things going on in the background that you're just kind of like admiring. It's
the rain, Griffin, the rain dropping on characters' faces, or the waves swishing. I mean, it's just the details. It's the devil's in the details, man. This is,
it is,
the visual effects team. I believe it was Weka and probably a variety of other visual effects partnerships with this film. A pat on the back and a raise, if you ask me, because they really bringing us back to this world.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing, right? Like Weta is just like kind of they've kind of emerged as just like the leading guys when it comes to VFX. I mean, they have been for some time, but if like you ever had a doubt in your mind, like go fucking watch this movie, because it's just 100%. It's astonishing.
100%.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to be one of those guys that's like only talking about the visuals with this film, because there's a lot of great character stuff going on, but it's kind of hard not to, just because of the feat of it all. I know a lot of people have, and I don't know if you feel this way, but like I've seen a lot of people say that it kind of feels like the world's most immersive video game or something like that.
I've seen a couple of those comments.
And like I kind of get that, but there's something a bit more human and tangible about it, and I think that's where the story kind of comes in. But it's like once you kind of settle into that high frame rate, you're in for the ride, and you're just like, oh yeah, like this just feels natural. So I don't know. Some people, again, going back to my original point, some people may struggle with that, and there's definitely like an adjustment period, regardless if you struggle with it or not.
Right.
Like there was for me, like I'm sure there was for you. But
I mean, honestly, when was the last 3D film you saw in theaters? That was another thing. It's like I
oh
don't
yeah,
watch
yeah.
3D often at
I don't
all.
know.
Yeah.
Like maybe Iron Man 3 or like one of those Marvel movies in like the
Yeah.
early 2010s. But yeah, I agree with you. But like and here's the other one. It's like, what was the last 3D movie to like really utilize
Really, exactly.
3D, right?
Exactly.
It's you won't see a better thing.
Maybe it's really
Yeah.
Scott's Prometheus, maybe that like, and it's just man, it's just like not a lot of
Yeah.
directors take the time to really shoot in 3D. It's the whole conversion thing of it, and this became kind of an old trick. But yeah, he definitely this was shot in 3D, ladies and gentlemen, and not that me and Griff are telling you all how to spend your hard earned money, but if you can, if you have the means, and if it's available in your area, see this in the biggest, most brightest, beautiful, loudest theater you can see it in, on top of that with 3D, because it is an experience that, like Griff said, takes a minute. Very similar to our characters learning how the way of the water. It takes you a minute to get used to the experience, but once you do, you're locked in. But Griff, man, we'll talk on some other visuals, some standout scenes, but just to kind of pivot over to what you mentioned, what I think stands out with this film is the actual story and some of the themes, man, and kind of how we open up the film. Again, it's been 13 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, Griff, based on the age of his oldest son, I would assume that it's been 16 years between the first. I don't know how old Natahim, I think, was his oldest son. I would say it's like 16, 17, would you say?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We can say it's at least been 15 plus years since the first Avatar to this one. And as we're introduced to Pandora, we see that Jake and the Sullys have expanded their family, Griff, and that's really where the heart comes in. We get, again, Natahim, I believe his second son was Lolak. We have the special Kiri, how they were to bring Sigourney Weaver into the story. We'll get into that. And Spider, who I have some issues with that character, Griff, that we'll talk about, and then their youngest, Tuck. So how did you feel about, again, kind of figuring out that we've been 15 years removed from the first one, and now Jake and Ney'tiri have their family, and their family is their fortress?
Yeah. When I knew that it was going to be primarily focused on their kids, I was a little bit like, okay. But like I've only gotten one movie with Jake and Ney'tiri, and I kind of want to see more of them. So I was a little bummed initially, but like I don't know, the way that they make this work, I instantly fell in love with the kids. I thought the family and their dynamic, and like Ney'tiri and Jake, and like the way they all kind of like work together, and some of the ups and downs that they have to go through. It was all really effective. Like I cared for every single kid in this film, which is kind of insane, like given the fact that there's like so many of them, and you're kind of like, oh, is there gonna be one that I'm feeling like I don't feel as attached to? But no, I was attached to each and every one of them, and I think that's just a testament to how great Cameron does, how great of a job Cameron and the screenwriters do of just letting you spend time with them, like basically like telling us a coming of age story on this fantasy planet. And then on top of that, it's this really, personal for him, this personal kind of like look at what it means to be a parent, and like how to, when to discipline your kids or when to not discipline your kid, like the ups and downs of parenting. And so like, because like Jake specifically is going through that, Ney'tiri a little bit, but like because Jake is specifically going through like this kind of arc of what does it mean to be a father, like this protector of his family, and like can he do that? Because Jake's going through that arc, and then you have these kids who are kind of like rebelling a bit. They feel like their dad's a bit too harsh on him, and stuff like that. You get some really great family drama in there, but it also just sort of like it makes it relatable.
100%.
And I don't know if we've ever seen like a film from James Cameron that is this personal of a look at like fatherhood, like the Aliens, and I don't even know if he had kids when Aliens initially came out.
Yeah.
But like, a lot of his sequels kind of deal with like parental relationships, but I
Mhm.
think this is probably the strongest example of it. I'm not saying The Way of Water is like a better movie than T2
Right,
or
T2,
Aliens or
yeah,
something like that,
yeah, I got
but
you, yeah.
like there's definitely like there is a family here, and like there's members who are maybe a bit like they're different. They're not like purebloods. They're like
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
adopted kids. There's like
There's one that can connect to the mother tree and fishes and
yeah,
yeah, it's
exactly.
very
So it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like learning to accept all of these people in this weird little, mismatch of a family. And
Yep.
so it's I don't know, that was kind of just a refreshing thing that I didn't expect to get from all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, man. And like you said, the family, you got to be on board with the family in order to really take in the film. Because, like you said, Griff, the kids are really the focal point. Because if we are going to stretch this thing out to 7 films, you would imagine very Game of Thrones-ish. We're going to see the arcs of an Arya, the arcs of a
Mhm.
Sansa, whether it's Took or Lolak, who was, like you mentioned, was the very rebellious son, the outcast. He had to stand behind the shadow of his father, who's this great warrior, and he has his older brother who's becoming a great warrior. So there's that element that you really got to buy into. And you touched on it too, and we'll kind of weave in the pros and cons as we go along. But one of the negatives, as you kind of alluded to, was I enjoyed the kids, but I also did miss out on Jake and Neytiri because they're great in this film. Seeing them being parents, especially Neytiri, like the mother bear aspect, and when she goes ham on that boat with after, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about her losing her son. But
Yeah.
I do wish there was a little bit more fleshed out with them and some more of those quieter moments of them being parents, especially from Jake's perspective. Because I haven't, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to squeeze in the first Avatar, but from what I remember from the first film, his relationship with his brother was never really elaborated on because if it wasn't for his brother dying, he would never be in this program, right? So, like, you can see
Yeah.
with that relationship with him and his sons, once his older brother take care of the big brother or little brother because he lost his brother. So, that whole connection there, I wish it was a little bit more of those characters in the forefront. But again, we hopefully have 6 more sequels to maybe spend a little bit more time with them. But getting back into just kind of how we open the film with where they've been to peace and harmony going on Pandora. But unfortunately, the damn humans, Griff, the sky people cannot get enough of Pandora. I can't blame them because I can't get enough of it. But they're there for
Yeah.
obviously evil reasons and resources. They finally come back after all this time of peace, and we get, you mentioned Andor earlier. Man, I feel like I was watching Star Wars when they were landing on Pandora again, the visual effects and seeing the forest burn down. And
I like Metal
unfortunately,
Gear.
it was just so beautiful to take that all in on the big screen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, all this stuff, all this peace, all the harmony they've built has been torn apart yet again. And this is where we find out, Griff, and we get the year has passed, and this is where we get the return of a character that I think we were all kind of like, how the hell is Colonel Miles going to make his return? Played by Stephen Lang. And I got to say, Griff, it's science fiction, baby. So it's cloning.
Oh yeah.
He's back
Yeah.
because they signed an agreement to, if I die on the mission, they can't kill us, right? We'll just come back bigger, stronger, and take you out. So my question for you, Griff, is how did you like Colonel Miles? And I think he was more complex, more interesting, had a lot more elements to him, especially with his son. But what
Yeah.
did you think about the return of Colonel Miles and how they brought him back?
Yeah, I was all in, and I'm glad that they didn't like spend all this time like trying to elaborately set it up. They were just kind of like, oh well, here we go. He had a clone. He was like, it's fine, you can buy into it because, of course, the military and the humans or whoever, they'd probably be trying to develop.
Right.
You
We're
know,
like 200 years in the future, too. So you'd imagine that technology would be around by then.
right. Yeah, and there'd also be like this contingency plan. Like, yeah,
Right.
I don't. It made sense to me, but I loved it because I think there's an interesting thing that they can explore with him, which is like he is the clone or he's the avatar of Miles Quaritch. He has all of his memories, all of his personality, his emotions, but he's not him.
Right.
And you can kind of start to see the kernel, no pun intended, but like you can see this kernel of like an idea, kind of this conflict start to kind of take over him a little bit because
Yeah.
like he is a Navi, right? And he kind of
Yeah.
takes to some of their traditions a bit more than some of the other characters and whatnot. And so there's this like, I don't know, you get the sense that he feels alive like when he is
Yep.
more of like a Navi kind of person, but then there's
Mhm.
also the Quartz side of his brain. It's like, and then he also has like, we find out at the very beginning that Spider is his son. which I
Yeah,
think we like
was
that makes sense.
yep.
And I like that there's like a contrasting sort of father-son dynamic to,
Mhm.
what's going on with Jake and his
Parallel with Jake.
kids.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a great parallel. And yeah, so it's like, well, this is Quaritch's kid, but like I'm not Quaritch, so it's like there's this weird disconnect, and yet there is a connect. It's just really, really interesting.
Yep.
And I love how he kind of like his arc goes throughout the course of the film, because really when you think about it, it's like this guy, while he has the memories of Quaritch and all that stuff, and like he saw his own death essentially,
That scene, Griff,
which
when
was,
he's holding the skull and crush. Come on.
yeah, man. Oh, it's
Oh,
so good. It's so good. That's like one of my favorite moments. But
oh, man.
like he sees all of this stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I should hate Jake, but like I'm not this guy.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. That to me is going to be like a really interesting thing for them to explore throughout the sequels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That kind of conflict, that internal conflict, which I think we can look forward to. I'm calling it now, Griff. Avatar 5. I'm calling it now. We're going to see the
yeah,
switch up. We're going to see Colonel, Miles, and Jake probably working together to take down the humans.
they have to.
I think we're
Yeah,
seeing that slowly being built in this film. And as you mentioned, as far as like the cloning side of it, I think of either films, Us, right? How Lupita Nyong'o's character and how it's not really you, but you've taken on all these emotions through the years. And there's
yeah,
various
yeah,
other cloning movies where, again, the clone is starting to have those emotions where they really shouldn't be there because it's really not your life. So
yeah,
it's going to be really fascinating to follow Colonel Miles throughout the rest of these sequels. And we're going to get to Spider here in a second because I have my issues with him, man. But before we
yeah,
get to Spider, Griff, I
yeah.
have to bring up, and we talked about her briefly, but we talked about another character being brought back, Sigourney Weaver. We know that she died in the first one. She was
Right.
the good human, the scientist studying the mother tree. And Griff, I need help, man. How does this work, man? Who's the father of the child, man? They're giving us some Star Wars vibes with who's the father of Kiri. Is it Norm the doctor? Is it someone else? Is it the mother tree was able to conceive a child with all these problems?
Yeah. I'm gonna
What
ask you who
you
you
going
think
with
the
that, man?
father is. Who do you think the father is?
I think it's going to be revealed, Griff, that somehow, some way, the mother tree and Agua, I think, or Agua, I can't
Awa.
remember that. Agua, yeah, I think they're going to
Yeah,
somehow
Awa. Yeah.
show that some way, somehow, that they were able to give her birth to this child that can set
Yeah.
this new generation of the people. But if it's not that, then it's probably Norm. I think
Yeah,
Norm is probably it.
yeah, which that was kind of a funny line that they
Yeah, when they talk,
in
when they
the
poke
film.
fun of her. Yep.
Now, I'm like almost 100% certain there was some sort of like concept, like it's not gonna be as like crude as like, oh, Grace was able to conceive with Awa. Like, no,
Right.
it's not like
Right.
that. It's like because of how she passed, there
Yeah.
was a way that her spirit and Awa's spirit were able to
Yep.
converge into this one entity.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and like it makes sense. Like she's like this kind of this shaman kind of person, right? Like this very sensitive person who's like in tune with the planet. She's
Yep.
able to like view it as this living, breathing entity, like not even just like, you know, like an intangible thing. Like she's like,
Yeah.
no, I hear it,
The
I hear her
heartbeat and all
heartbeat.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like so there is obviously that very deep connection to Awa, which would
Yeah.
make sense that she has a part of Awa inside of her. So yeah, she as a character,
Yeah.
I loved her so much, and I was so
Same.
fascinated by her. The stuff towards the end when she's like directing the sea creatures towards like the bad guys.
Such a beautiful in the reverse, not to
Sick.
jump too far ahead, but the reverse
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
kids now being the protectors of the mom and dad and just calming
yeah.
down. Lolock talking to Jake, breathe, and then you're seeing Kiri saying, "Mom, we're gonna be like." I'm sorry to interrupt. That was such a
Oh, no,
beautiful.
no, no, you're good, dude.
Love
Like that, I love like the third act, and again, not to your point, not to get too far ahead, but the third act of this film was like fucking
Oh,
spectacular. It just the emotions, the role reversal, the whole the action, like it was just it was breathtaking. But
100%,
yeah,
man.
Sigourney Weaver's character, like it's like I know some people were like, oh, it sounds like Sigourney Weaver, so it's like a bit weird. Like I
Yeah,
got like hints of it every now and
yeah.
then, but
I thought she
it
played it off well.
mostly yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
it felt like she was a kid or like a
Right.
teenager, you know? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. I agree. I was on board with her from the very
Yeah.
jump when we meet her, and just that whole idea of the mysterious element of her, which again builds the world. And I'm very excited to see where they take that. But I'm right there with you, Griff. I really enjoyed her character, and I think
Yeah.
it's, again, to put a hat into the theory bucket. Kiri, Spider, picking and choosing who's gonna, what side they're gonna go
Mm.
on. You can see that those seeds being planted in this film. Monkey Boy and her are probably gonna get to some monkey business, and we're gonna get some other
Ah,
offspring in the future, man. Because they're not blood, Griff. It's not,
no, 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 not at all.
we're in the age of House of the Dragons, my friend, where
Yeah.
there's a lot of incest there, so it's not technically blood, my friend. So they could have an intimate relationship and get kids of their own, but we've been beating around the bush, man. And the Spider character, let's just jump right into him. I'm going to be honest with you, Griff. After seeing it twice, it's still my least favorite element of this film. I
Yeah. Yeah.
understand the Spider character and the importance not only in this film, but for the films to come.
Mhm.
But for some reason, Griff, the actor just wasn't working for me, man. It's from
Yeah.
moments of inconsistent moments of like being scared, being afraid, being with his father, to just like joking around, laughing when we see the Colonel getting his own little creatures. Like, where is your mindset at, Spider? And then the moment at the end with him saving it. The Spider character, Griff, was my least favorite element of this film after seeing it twice, and it's still standing
Yeah.
still in this second rewatch. Not a Spider fan, man. What did you think about Spider?
Spider. Yeah, I I don't want to be mean to the kid. I granted I have no idea how old he is, but like I don't think the actor was all that great. I mean, and if he, has the ability to be good within him, I don't think James Cameron was able to pull it out of him.
Yeah,
Yeah, as a character, I actually kind of dug him. I thought
yeah,
there was like
100%. Yeah,
like you like I really got like the conflict between like his newfound family that
mhm,
took him in and all that, and then like, oh, this like my father has now returned, but
right.
he's not really my father yet. I feel like this kind of like parental connection to him. Like
Mhm.
it was like that again, going back to that whole Quaritch thing. That was just really interesting to watch unfold a bit.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I liked that. And then also like there was this kind of interesting thing where it was like, even though he was a part of the Sully's family,
right.
Ney'tiri didn't
She did not
really
like him,
view
man.
him. She
Yeah,
did
they
not
said it
like
very
him.
upfront. She doesn't
She
trust him.
viewed
He's a demon. He's a human.
yeah, well, yeah, she viewed him as that, and then she called him
Mhm,
like a pet, like a dog,
mhm,
which is like
mhm.
really interesting. There's like this idea, these like traditional values, kind of like bogging Neytiri down from like progressing, I guess, as a person, and
Yeah,
it's like her whole thing was like trying to get Jake to see her and her people and her world for who they are in the first
yep,
film, and like she's really not able to do that
yeah,
to other people in this movie. So that's like a really interesting challenge in and of itself for her. And I
yeah,
think while I don't know if she's like fully if she's like fully changed by the end of this movie,
right.
I think what Spider does definitely kind of endears him to her and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really just comes down to the actor, and I hate to
It's
say
really
that because
yeah.
that's unfortunate, but yeah, yeah.
I mean, and I'll play devil's advocate. I would imagine it's not the easiest thing to probably be, knowing that he was literally the only human really in the whole film to have like consistent
Yeah.
scenes, and he's probably acting with other actors with their suits on. It might have been hard to disconnect. And again, I don't know too much from the actor. I know I would imagine this is his first big break. And hopefully, Griffin, I don't know why I keep thinking of Game of Thrones, but I think of Sophie Turner in her early days in Game of Thrones and thinking where she ended on the show, even though the finale of
Yeah.
the eighth season is a whole nother conversation. But just seeing that growth in the acting and the performance in that character, we might have that going with this young man if they use him, because who knows, Avatar 3, we might jump 10 years ahead and they recast the character. But I'm hoping that the actor, if they keep him, progresses in the role, because he really took me out on. I think about, there's a couple scenes. One that comes to mind is when we see the colonel going to the reef people. He's, you know, messing up the other tribes to try to get the information for where Jake's location is. And when just seeing Spider, no, stop it, come on, don't do this. It's, oh my gosh, girl, I'm like, this kid is killing me, man. He's taking me out of the scene, man. But we'll see, man. We'll see. It
To be
reminded me.
fair, yeah,
Yeah.
like to be fair, that is a very James Cameron kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like if you look, if we were to judge, and just to give this kid the benefit of the doubt, if we were to judge Kate and Leo off of Titanic,
Yes. Yeah.
not the greatest performances, really not great. And now they're both world-class actors.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And Kate Winslet is in this film, as we'll talk
yeah,
about.
yeah, she was really good. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's you know, he did have the added benefit of, like, normally in a situation like that, he'd be acting against a green screen or something like that. But I think here he was actually acting like opposite.
Yeah, they have the motion capture
the
suits.
actors.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of a factor that really played into it. You know,
Right.
maybe James Cameron's just kind of like a George Lucas type, where he's not necessarily the best.
Just stand there. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think he's probably a bit more involved, but maybe not the best when it comes to working with actors. And that's fine. But
I agree.
look, he wasn't my favorite part of the film, but like I could live with it because I liked what they were doing with the camera.
Yeah, no, 100. I 100% with you, Griff. I understand and appreciate what that character symbolizes and what it can mean moving forward. It was just the execution of the performance, some of the direction, and some of the choices are meant to piss you off as an audience. We're supposed to not be in the bandwagon of Spider after saving, you know, his father. So that's purposeful, but it's the acting for me that really throws me off. But as we kind of pivot over from opening the film to getting kind of the understanding that the RDA now has Colonel Miles going after Jake, another element that I do find to be still a little bit stagnant, a little bit stale is, you know, even taking Spider aside, the human story as far as the human motivations is just very, very surface level as far as every single, whether it's the new colonel, whether it's the scientist, and especially the skipper, who, by the way, when he gets his arm taken off by that whale,
that was great.
So great.
It was gnarly, man. I was like, damn, all right, there's your one like little bloody kill for the film.
It was awesome, man. But even that character seemed to be in such a different film. But what I'm getting at, Griff, is the human stuff to me is still kind of very, very one-dimensional, where it's just very stereotypical of, as you talked about, the themes of colonialism in the first one and this one. But I just want a little bit more depth. Like, I just want one human character to be like, we are kind of like General Zod and Man of Steel. He is all about saving Krypton. And we understand, even though he's the villain, I understand why he's fighting so hard to bring Kryptonians and his Earth or his planet to our world. But every human in this story is just like, we want the liquid that's $80 million to stop aging. We want to just take out these planets. It's just so like almost, you know, mustache twirling villain mindset. I just wish we had one human that was just a little bit more, I'm doing this to save my daughter who's dying on Earth right now, or I'm doing this to, you know, continue our family legacy. It's just so one-dimensional with the human story, Griff. Do you share those sentiments, or do you feel like it's just a James Cameronism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a James Cameronism to paint in broad strokes. I kind of like that because it was kind of the similar thing with the first film, where it's like these corporate assholes really don't care about anything else other than their profit or like their own vanity, and it's like of course people like this would be mining a planet, and I think as humans we like to think that there is like a stronger, you know, motivation behind some of the worst atrocities ever committed, right? Like we try to humanize a situation, but sometimes it's like it's almost like deflating, right? Like almost like did you see Glass Onion earlier this year?
I finally got a chance to see it.
Yeah, it's like kind of one of the, and I'm not going to spoil that film, but like it's one of those things where it's like we come up with all these things in our head, but it's like the answer is really in plain sight, and they're just showing you who they are every single day. And so I think for Cameron to, and knowing how passionate he is about the ocean and like the sea life there and preservation, like of course the people who are you know, contributing to its destruction and knowingly so, I think that's the key here, is like if they were unknowingly doing that, then then we have a little bit of a, more, I guess there's something there where we can kind of explore with these people. But like,
Right.
just like in real life, these corporations know what they're doing is wrong, but they just do it because they don't care. It's all about profit and like selling people something, and like the vanity liquid that like that allows people to not age. Like the fact that you would kill a whale to harness a little bit, or like just harness
the whole
brain juice.
They say the scene is like, what do you do with the bottom? Nothing. We just need this. Yeah, I hear you.
Exactly. And it's like it really puts things into perspective, and it's just sort of like, fuck, like this is just like really evil, and they know it's evil. So it's like, why should we try and give them like more motivation than that? Like,
I hear you.
I think your nuanced villain, your villain who's kind of conflicted with himself, is Quaritch, right? You have him there. We know who he is from the first film, and like all of the stuff that he kind of believes in, and like his disdain for the Na'vi. But now with the clone version, it's like he kind of has that, but he kind of doesn't. He's it's like people from certain communities who almost like detest the fact that they are someone that they're part of that community or something like that. So there's this like interesting conflict there. So it's like there's your nuanced villain. The corporate guys like that like I don't think we need to dive too deep into that, their motivations. I will say like the guy from I forget his name, the guy from What We Do in the Shadows, like
Jermaine. You saw moments where he was kind of like, I hate this, but I drink. This is why I drink, right? So
see, that's an interesting kind of that's an interesting character.
Balance. That's what I'm more saying. I wanted more of that balance, like maybe one or two human characters that feel the same, and you can see the rebellious natures of some of the humans, which I would imagine eventually we're going to see a bunch of humans going against and avatars work together. So I think that's the seeds being planted. I just wanted more of that nuance of that.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think the cool thing about him is like, now that he sees that like this entire operation they can like combat it, he's probably more inclined to join the fight against it. And so like, I'll be curious to see where he kind of goes going forward, being this guy who's like complacent, doesn't think that like, he can do anything about a situation, to kind of be being like woken up to the fact that's like, no, dude, you should be fighting against this. Like, you are right. So there is that, like that. Yeah, that's an interesting character. I didn't expect to like him as much as I did. I thought it was just going to be like one of the human crew, but it was like, no, that's cool.
And I'm a big fan of Jermaine as well. Again, my issue, the skipper was just like in another movie. He was just like a classic kind of, villain per se, and then when he got his moment, I like that. And who's to say he's not coming back, with a new arm in the following sequels? But again, human, I just wish he's done. He's done for. Well, you're never dead, especially with the water griff. He might. It's just the beginning.
You think that guy's gonna get to go have a one-on-one with Awa? I doubt it.
You never know with James Cameron with Avatar 17. But kind of pivoting back over to, okay, so the first half we established leaving our land. We got to protect our family. They're on this journey to the water people. And this is where the visual effects to me just we're just in awe. When we're on the reef and we meet Kate Winslet and her husband, who are they know Jake, because as of now, Jake has built this legacy where people know who he is and what he's about, which, by the way, I love that he has to literally leave. He puts everything aside to protect his family, leaving his leadership. Ney'tiri has to leave her family and all the stuff that she learned there. But they're now at this reef, and this is where we get the other families and other fractions and see how people work. And this is really where the film focuses more on the kids, and particularly Lolak, which was the second oldest son, which, as we talked about earlier, was the more rebellious one. He gets himself into trouble, Griff. Some of the times it felt a little bit like it's a little bit too on the nose, but again, teenagers, man, we all found ourselves getting in some trouble, and I would imagine I would get myself into trouble if I had access to these sea creatures and can do all these cool stuff. But Lolak befriends this whale-like creature, which the name of the whales are slipping my mind at the moment. I have it somewhere in my
Free
notes,
Willy.
The Free Willy character, and that one particular Free Willy creature was the main focal point. But at that point, here it is. The Toucan or the Bay Acon. It's so many creatures and worlds and all that
Dude,
stuff.
that's sort of the thing. It's like
Yeah.
when it comes to this movie, I don't remember anyone's name except for
Yeah.
like Jake, Ney'tiri, and
Jake,
Quaritch.
Kiri. Yeah, it's tough. But
That's fine.
I'm sorry, it was Tukun was the creatures, the sea creatures. What did you think about that element and the plot of that particular Tukun, Bayakan, I think was the name of that particular one, and paralleling
Yeah.
it to Lowlock, which they're kind of outcast, kind of lonely, and they bond. And how did you feel about that whole story and really Lowlock taking most of the second half of the film?
Yeah, I loved it because they're the two outcasts, right? The people
Yeah.
who were just kind of like ostracized by their own communities. Like even the whale, right? Like the other whales don't like it, and then the water people don't even
Yeah.
like him because
He broke
he he
traditions and
he
yeah.
broke tradition and
Yep.
he killed. And it's like,
Yep.
well, yeah, he killed out of self-defense, like because of what happened to
What
his
happened?
mom, I
Yep.
believe, or something like that.
Mhm.
And they were saying like, man, doesn't matter, he broke the rule, it's an absolute. And it's like,
Rules.
that's dumb.
Yeah.
So there's a really interesting kind of thing about like kids breaking tradition
Mhm.
for reasons, and maybe sometimes traditions need to be broken in order to move forward. But
Yeah.
I like that. I thought that's
Mhm.
where I thought that was where the film got a lot of its heart.
Yes. Yep.
I did not expect to care for these whales as much as I did, but like,
I was gonna say.
dude, I was feeling it. I was like,
Yeah,
I
man.
fucking love them. The the fact that they could have like full blown
The
conversations with them, I thought
conversations,
was
Griff. I was like, man, this is
that was so cool.
oh
It was
man, that
so
was
cool.
so great, man. And if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken, the well that we talked about when they showed the example of them taking the liquid that's gonna, stop aging and it's worth $80 million. They killed
yeah,
Kate Winslet. That was her sister, her C sister.
yeah.
That was the importance there. So yeah, man, I love this. And the baby, and it was great, man.
Oh
I
yeah, it
love
was.
those wells.
Well, I think that a big reason of why we got so attached to them was because like of that ritual, right? The whales come in and the water people kind of like go into the water and they have their friends and their sister or like whatever. I forget their like spiritual sister or their whatever. Like they view these whales as siblings, not as just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
animals, which I think is like
exactly.
so beautiful. And so you have them having full-blown conversations, like catching up
Mhm.
about their kids, like you were mentioning Kate Winslet's character. She's
Yeah,
saying like it took her so long to have that kid. It's like these are like people
they're
almost.
beings.
And I think,
They have
yeah,
souls.
they're
They have intelligence. They're smarter than the humans. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that was like I love that so much. And I think that's what part of the reason why I got so attached to them, outside of the fact that like this kid, the youngest son, Sully, whatever the hell his name is, I'm not gonna remember it, but like
Lowlock.
the fact that
Lowlock.
he
Yeah.
felt, yeah, right. The fact that like it's like he didn't feel accepted in his own family, he's not
Yep.
accepted in this new tribe, he wasn't accepted in his own tribe. And so it's like
Mhm.
he just wants to feel seen. He wants a
Yeah.
sense of belonging.
Yep.
And so like it makes sense that he would find that with this whale companion, and
Mhm.
it allows him to kind of mature, to come into himself as a person,
Yep.
and then allows him to save his family a bit towards the end.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was such like that was probably like my favorite aspect of the film. I think was him with that whale, and then seeing
Yeah.
how everything kind of like shot off from there.
I agree. And it even more to that connection, going back to that particular well, Biacon, I think was that well's name, which I have here, was as you mentioned, he went against the grain. He went to fight back and end up getting some of his friends and family killed. And you can think of the same thing that Lolock does. Him and his brother got off the boat, but it was Lolock that said, "Let's go save our friend or our brother, Spider." Unfortunately, got his brother killed. So it's just so much. And then that whole back and forth between Jake and his second oldest son. You've done enough. I can't wait to see more of that relationship develop over the sequels, because I would
Yeah,
imagine even though Jake and him bonded, there's still going to be that in the back of his head. You were not necessarily you were the reason, but it's just like there's so many examples in this film where you went against my orders that it ended up getting one of your brothers killed, your family members killed. Even going
yeah,
back to the beginning of the film when Jake is telling them you're supposed to be on watch, but Lolock is like, "Come on," telling his big brother get in. So many times it got himself into trouble. So I'm just really excited to see where that relationship goes, because I think it's not going to be, it's forgiven at the moment, but it's not forgotten. So I'm really intrigued to see if next time we see Lolak, is he still rebellious, or has he learned from his mistakes of unfortunately getting his brother killed? Which bringing to that point, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, it's one of those things where it's like I don't even think it was fair necessarily for him to be blamed, and nor do I. And I think Jake kind of like comes to understand that, right? Like he kind of, I think once his son kind of shows him that he has come of age, that he's not an idiot or any of that stuff, and like he saves his life. It's like he learns, it's like, oh wow, my kid has been trying to show me stuff all this time, and I haven't been watching or listening. It's like I haven't exactly. Like I haven't been able to see him, and it's like now I do, and I feel like whatever failings Jake may have had as a father in protecting his oldest son, he can kind of move forward a little bit with his youngest one. It's like that the whole idea of like he lost a son, but he gained one in return with Spider. He
when they find out what Spider did, Griff, I cannot wait to that scene.
See, but I don't
be some furniture moving, man.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I think they would understand why he did what he did. The Sullys don't.
Kiri might have a feeling about that, man.
She might.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like it was Jake's fault that his son died or whoever. It was just like something that happened.
And I think he went into the water, got shot.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, Jake feels that it was his responsibility to protect his family, and he failed that as a father. And I think he kind of has to learn to realize that it's like, well, I can't be this hovering kind of shield forever, right? These kids make their own choices. They're their own people. And I have to see that. And so, that was a really kind of powerful thing. So I don't think he's going to continue to blame, his son. I think it's going to be something where it's like, he's learned, and he's going to kind of move forward. And so I'll be curious what happens with that dynamic going forward, but it feels like it's in a stronger place. It feels like their whole family is in a stronger place, if I'm being honest.
I agree. I don't see this death being a division between the family unless things get revealed, and particularly Spider, and see how if Kiri decides to side with him or whatever the case may be. But I don't see that being like a destroying the family, more so. But there is a moment in which, and just to kind of recap the second half before we get into this incredible third act, again, most of that second half is that relationship between the well and his son. But also, this is where I can see some of the complaints coming into with the second half, the kind of feeling like we're kind of rehashing some of the similar beats from the first one, whether it's the training montages, whether it's the relationship between Lolak and Kate Winslet and the leader, his youngest daughter, who was teaching him all the stuff that felt very Jake and Ney'tiri romance relationship, an outsider coming in and you got to teach him your way. So I can see those complaints, Griff. Did it bother you at all? There were those similar beats, or was it just kind of like, it's something that was a plus in the first one. Why not, use that element again? How'd you feel about some of those rehashing of some of those plots?
Yeah, I think in typical James Cameron fashion, he takes what worked about the previous one, and then he kind of like gives people more of that, but in a different way. So like here, like it is a similar movie in the sense that like the Sullys have to learn to adapt to another way of life and all of that, and like there are similar beats to that first film, but it's still effective, and it's told differently, and there's almost more emotion attached to it because of this family and stuff, and they're like, and what's going on in the looming threat of Quaritch again, in a bit of a more like targeted sense. It's like you never know when he's going to pop up. So he allows you to bask in the beauty of the world and in the just immerse you in everything in such a visceral way. And I think that's just sort of the thing. It's like sort of why we go see an Avatar film. Like, yes, it's the characters, it's the story, but it's just like the feeling of being in this world and seeing different corners of the world. We saw the mainland in that first film, and the
forest,
people.
Yep.
Yeah. And like in this one, it's like, okay, so we're going to show you this new section. I'd almost feel cheated if we didn't get to go through and take our time, like understanding the way
Yeah.
of water, understanding these
100%.
people and the relationship with the ocean, and especially knowing James Cameron's passion for the sea and like oceanic conservation and stuff like that. I would want him to take his time to show us why he loves this environment and why he feels so passionately about it and respects that ecosystem, because it's going to make me think differently about it when I leave the theater and I start thinking about like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should do more. I think he said this in an interview, but he was like, it's going to make you think about doing more than just like, throwing a couple dollars of Greenpeace, right? You're going to actually think about your role in this ecosystem and what you can do to help preserve the ocean. I don't think you get that effect unless you're basking in the world of it. And that's really what was going on in that first film, why it was so effective, why it spoke to so many people. So it only makes sense that that's what they would do in this movie, regardless of like, it's hitting similar beats of like training and like understanding the way of water and blah, blah, blah. But like, it works, and there's a different larger story at play here. So it's not like it's detracting from anything really.
I agree. I only pose that up because I can hear the comments. I can hear some of the, and I've seen some of the negativity that people are saying that it's just a rehash. So I'm totally with you. I don't feel like, even though there are similar beats, but it's purposeful. And now if we do this again, come Avatar 3, and we're doing the same, song and dance, and of course I'm going to have some criticisms there, but I think knowing that this is a new environment, new set of people, similar kind of story was going on, but just from a different perspective, I really appreciate it. And like you said, it goes back to our visual effects conversation. That's where the visuals really stood out to me, going in the depths of the water, seeing the different creatures, how they're able to use some of the little creatures to use them as like breathing paralysis and all that different stuff. And it just is incredible to see. And we need all that stuff. We needed all that world building. We need all that character development, because as you mentioned, Griff, as we pivot over to this third act, man, this third act was 45 minutes, maybe an hour of build up to this moment where, again, the kids, Lolak wants to warn his friend, because now at this point, the colonel has come up with the idea, this isn't working. We need to get them, we need to, flag them out, because they're just going to keep running. So that's where they kill the whale. And now the water people, they want to go to war because they just lost their friends and this is part of their family. We're on the boat, Griff. The kids are kidnapped yet again, and it's time to go to war. Take it away, Griff. Where do you want to start? From, again, the skipper getting his arm ripped off to, the Jake versus the colonel. And Jake,
man, I don't know.
Cameron knows how to build tension. When Sully's talking this, or the colonel's talking this stuff to Jake, I'm gonna come for you. I'm gonna kill your whole family. And I love that Jake turned around. He said, "Let's just do it, man. Let's just tango, man." That was just such a old school kind of like True Lies type of mano type of stuff, man. I loved every second of that third act. Griff, talk to me, man. What do you think about that third act?
Yeah. Oh god, dude, it was fucking great. Like it's just it was so exhilarating that there was real tension involved there. There was real stakes. Like the way that third act is orchestrated so that you feel like any one of these people could die at any moment. Like normally you get into a situation like this and you're like, okay, these are the main characters. We know they're not going to survive. It's like, no, all bets are off, because you have no idea what Quaritch is going to do. You don't know what the environment's going to bring.
Right.
And also, like, they just killed the oldest son. So like there is
two
this
times, Griff. It still got me emotionally, man. It hits really home for me two times. And even though we didn't get to spend the most time with I can't think of the character's name. Natahim, I think was his name, but you felt his presence. You felt that he was the good kid. He was doing everything right, and he ended up dying, Griff.
Yeah, man. It was so sad. Like to your point, I think he's the kid we spent the least amount of time with, and yet I still felt horrible for that family, like Ney'tiri and Jake and the rest of them. And
the first kid, Griff. He's going fishing with his son, man. And when we go back to that callback
scene at the end, oh my god, that was so moving. Oh, it's really, really emotional.
Dad? I don't know. I just like seeing you. I like seeing you. It gets me, Griff. It gets me. But
Oh,
go
dude.
ahead. The third act. Go ahead, man. Get back
Yeah,
to
no,
it.
it's great. I don't. No one else will understand this except for me and the the people who like this movie. But like the third act, like there is this thing in like the James Bond community where it's like the second Pierce Brosnan film, Tomorrow Never Dies, feels like a James Cameron movie. And it's one of those ones where you're watching, you're like, man, I like this is a great film, but I kind of wish like James Cameron would have made it. The third act of that movie takes place on like an oceanic base that's like very similar to the one we got in this movie, and it's like just like full blown like action, like 90, like just everything you would expect out of a James Cameron finale. This movie in the third act of it gave me that like little wish fulfillment. It felt like the climax of like Tomorrow Never Dies, and I loved it. I just think the different elements of it, right? Like it starts out where like, you know, they're coming in, they're fighting on their little like fish dragons and shit like that, and I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. Like I don't know. I love that. And then the stuff on the ship was effective. And then like the little, it was almost like he was doing Titanic again, where like the thing was like capsizing and they're like
100%,
under the water and they're like trying to survive
with the sea crab things. The water. It was Alien, Titanic. He was just like, you know what? Let me give you some of my greatest hits.
It was kind of like a James Cameron greatest hits finale, and it worked so well. It's because it's like you're watching the movie and you're like, I'm loving every bit of this, but it's like, okay, there's a little bit like I'm waiting for the action. When's the big spectacle gonna come? And like boom, does it friggin' deliver? You know?
100%, man. I think, and again, I think it all boils down to, for those that are watching, if you buy into the family, because as you mentioned, Griff, you can have all the best visual effects in the world, you can have the best third act in the world, but it doesn't matter if you don't care for the characters. And like you said, man, the stakes are there. We lose the son, and even though we didn't spend a lot of time with him, I go back to that first scene when we're hearing Jake rehash all what's been going on, and this is his first son, and we see that moment when he's showing the people his son. We see him fishing with his son, and we see his son, even though we don't get that much time, it was, you felt his presence when you did see him on screen, when he was there trying to tell his brother, don't do that, or when they're on, you know, the boat, and he's like, who's the best brother, who's the warrior, and when he stood up for his brother, when he got into the fight with the reef kids, you felt that death, man. I felt that. And when Ney'tiri goes on the rock and she's just pouring, Zoe Saldana, she has the best cry face and the best cry in Hollywood.
In these movies, yeah.
Great, man. You can feel that passion, which also, too, just to backtrack as far as visual effects, was it me, Griffin, or did the likeness of the actors really kind of shine more in this one than the first one? There was a moment when I thought Sam Worthington, when he was in the water with his son, I'm like, oh, that looks literally like Sam Worthington. Like, the likeness of these actors were very prominent to me. But oh man, third act, Griff, it really because I was on board with this family, with this fight that they were fighting for their fortress of their family. The Sullys stick together, Griff, and they stick together, but unfortunately lose someone in the process. But all of it, man, was great.
Oh yeah, it was damn good. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that definitely the likeness is pretty uncanny in these films. And so it was, and again, going back to like the stuff with Quaritch and Jake and like their fight, and like Quaritch kind of like being unable to like, Ney'tiri basically like having him by having his like pseudo son under the knife and stuff.
That was such a good scene, because it goes back to what you said earlier. She doesn't like Spider, y'all. Like, this is kind of a very Game of Thrones is on my brain for some reason. This is a very Caitlin Stark versus Jon Snow, where she hated Jon Snow because she thought that was the bastard son of Ned, and she just hates humans. And she was, I think, Griff, I don't think she was, I wouldn't call her bluff. I think if puff came to shove, she would have killed Spider right then.
Absolutely. No, she was filled with vengeance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she had every reason to want to kill him, and I think she would have had, he not acted the way he did.
100%.
Even
the Spider character, just to throw him a bone, there's a moment when he sees Ney'tiri going like kind of beast mode, and he's kind of like fearful, and I think that's a plot that we can see. I think Spider and Ney'tiri will have a clashing in the future.
Yeah, they definitely will. Because it's like he's not going to put up with that, especially as like their now adopted son.
Right.
I mean, maybe like again, like sort of what I was saying earlier, like maybe you can see her kind of like turning a new leaf and like just being a bit more accepting of him. But yeah, it didn't feel like we got like full blown resolution to that arc.
Yep.
So yeah, to your point, I think that'll be a bit of a contentious situation down the road, maybe in the next film or so.
And I read somewhere, and again, hopefully we get the fifth one, but I read that the producer of this film did, I guess not spoil it, but he did say, if we get to 5, we will see Ney'tiri in the story pivot to Earth, that we will see a portion of the film take place on Earth because as you mentioned earlier, she hasn't accepted the humankind. So it's going to be really interesting to see her taking that acceptance, especially now with Spider being that adopted son officially. I'm very intrigued to see that element of her. And again, that was one of my another criticism was I do wish that Jake and Ney'tiri were more in the forefront, or not more in the forefront, but I wish it was a better balance of the kids in their story and the parents in their story, because it was within that second half that was the missing element. The parents were kind of in the forward or the background.
Yeah, yeah. Which again, that like I understand, and but at the same time, it was like, well, we got the first movie with them, and like, while yes, I wanted to, it's been 13 years, and I wanted to see them kind of more in this movie. I think when you go back and you watch all of them again, it'll feel right, right? Like when we get that first movie,
yeah,
right,
really,
It's like we'll watch that first movie and we're like, okay, sweet, this feels like a nice kind of like introduction to Jake and Ney'tiri, a very in-depth one, and then
100%.
We'll move on to the next one, and it's like, well, they're still struggling with their own stuff, but like they have kids now, so it's like, how is that going to affect them, and how are those kids going to function in this world? And
those kids having kids themselves, which I would imagine would be something that would come to fruition in the sequels, them being their own.
Well, maybe, right? Like we don't know how many, like what the year, like how many years are going to go by between this and 3 or 3 and 4 and stuff like that. Like it could honestly, it could only be a matter of months, maybe. Like maybe it all takes place over the course of like a very short period of time. I don't know.
And also too, I would imagine, knowing James Cameron, if I'm not mistaken, shot 3 is in the can from what I heard, and 4 is pretty much gearing into 4 or post-production. So I would imagine those kids that they had on set, that they probably shot a lot of those kids they don't age out. So
that was what I was gonna say, is like I'm pretty sure even like 5 is shot, like, because they shot them all at the same time. Like there was no sort of like one day they'd be shooting something from Avatar 2, and then they'd shoot something from Avatar 4, and I think they did it because exactly what you said, they didn't want the kids to age out.
The kids be the adults. Yeah,
exactly. So that leads me to think that like, oh, we're not going to get massive time jumps, but also I think that's just like kind of a cool way of doing these movies, because I think it makes it harder for leaks to come out, because you're like, I don't know if this is in 3, 4, 5, like whatever the fuck, like it's anything is possible. Like, so like I think more maybe this is, I don't know if other people feel this way, but I feel like more franchises should possibly take a page out of the Avatar playbook and just like fucking batch shoot them all, then just boom, boom, boom.
I'm looking at House of Dragons, man. I don't know why they didn't just shoot seasons so close together. They knew they had a hit in their hand.
You're feeling Game of Thrones today, man. You're really
I don't know why the Game of Thrones is on my mind, man. I have no idea.
I don't know either, but that's fine. I love House of the Dragon, so it's okay. It's Golden Globe snubs. I know it's bothering you.
Oh my gosh, man, come on, Cass. This King Viserys, and anyway, listen, man. As we wrap up this third act, again, everything hits home. We end the fight with Spider saving his dad, leaving him. We get the moment of the kids saving their parents. We have the moment of again when they put their kid in the mother tree on the Rift people's land, and he's a part of their ancestors now, and now they're officially sea people moving forward. So again, I would assume that we're probably gonna explore other elements of the water, but I'm assuming that 3 will primarily take place with them being a part of this this tribe here. So we end, man.
Well, or will it be somewhere else?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They might need to relocate now because they're,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
very true. But
possible.
they are officially sea people,
They are. They're sea
in
people.
there. But as we wrap up this conversation, Griff, final thoughts. Again, everyone, by the time this video is up, which might be late Thursday night or maybe Friday morning, I'm gonna have Griffin's review on the in the description of the video. But final thoughts, Griff, and if you want to give it a score or a letter grade,
Yeah.
where do you want to place it, and which one did you prefer more, part one and part two, and was it worth the wait?
Yeah, I think it was definitely worth the wait. I mean, if only for like the advancements in technology alone, it's just, oh man. I am just ready for Avatar to become like a cultural phenomenon again. This just massive juggernaut of a blockbuster.
Mhm.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling James Cameron. I'm feeling what he's throwing down with these movies. They're all original.
Yeah.
I have been missing this for so long, like just original big budget storytelling, not based off of pre-existing
Yes.
IP, just like this
Mhm.
insane concept that he has that he's gonna just make into this massive franchise. Like this feels like his Star Wars, right? Like it just
1000%. Yep.
like let's fucking go, man. And now there's going to be like an entire generation of kids who grow up with Avatar and that's going to be their thing. And even
Yeah.
though the first movie like came out in '09,
Right.
like the sequels going forward, it's just like yes. And I think the general public is going to love this movie. I
Mhm.
really do. Even despite the like even though people are like, "Oh, it's 3 hours long." Like whatever. Like they sat through 2 hours and
Come
40
on,
minutes of
guys.
the
We're,
first
we're
one.
watching 8 hours of Stranger Things the first night it dropped.
Yeah.
I, mean, I think
Yeah.
that whole conversation can be thrown out of the window because we're
I
binging
hate
stuff
it.
like addicts.
I think it's a ridiculous conversation
Yeah.
because of television and like, yeah, okay, you have episode breaks or whatever, but you're still binging all the way through. If its story
Exactly.
is a good story, you're going to be invested. If it's like
100%.
visually appealing,
Mhm.
you're going to want to sit there and be in the world. And like that was the case with me. I never felt the length. I just loved being there.
Right.
I could have genuinely stayed there for like 4 hours. It's just like one of those
Yeah.
experiences that is it just the time flew by
Mhm.
and I loved it. So yeah, I going back to the point, better than the first movie for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Loved the intimate character dynamics, the meditation on family and fatherhood and like the coming of age elements. It was like Cameron was able to sort of blend his experience as a parent and a teenager together in one movie and create this really like universal, relatable story that is kind of tapping into just the same sort of thing that he was doing in that first movie, but
Right.
obviously tackling different um like I guess just like people issues that we go through,
Right.
which I really liked at different phases in our lives. And then on top of that, just like his love of the ocean, his like plea for just like caring about that ecosystem and why it's so
Right.
important to us, like that felt super personal, and I loved that. The action was fantastic. The world just I can't sing the praises of this film enough. It is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And it just kind of proves why James Cameron is the king of blockbusters.
The
So
crown. He has the crown, man. And the crown
yeah,
isn't
dude,
going
he got
anywhere,
the
Griff.
crown. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. Again, you can check out both of our reviews to get more of the, maybe some more of our criticisms, which we talked about, the spider, some of the human stuff, some of the familiar beats. And I will say this as far as the runtime, I definitely agree with you. I love the world. There is, after seeing it a second time, there's maybe about a 10 to 15 minute stretch that could have maybe been
Sure.
reorganize or maybe cut out a little bit to focus on more of the other stuff. But overall, Griff, I'm right there with you, man. It's a blockbuster like no other. At least this year speaking. It's visually beautiful. The story, very engaging, more visceral, more mature, much better than the first. And this is coming from someone that enjoyed the first. I think you guys get our point. Go see this film. And I assume if you're watching this video, you've seen it, and we've obviously spoiled everything about it, but let us know in the comments how you felt about it, favorite moments, least favorite moments, thoughts for the sequel. And before we end out, Griff, one more thing. We're to both put our little hats on and pretend to be box office experts. So, Griff, we talked about it before we went live or went on this recording here. Box office are now like impossible to kind of forecast because of
I can't predict
obviously the
this.
pandemic, and we're still, dealing with the industry trying to recover, especially now with streaming and things being available on streaming platforms 45 days after they premiere in the theater. Griff, the first film we know. Now, it did take 13 years to accumulate almost $3 billion. But during its initial run, I think it hit at like 2.7, I think, for many, many years, or maybe 2.5, and then eventually got to where it's at now. I don't think Griff is going to come close to like, and I'm just referring to like maybe let's just put it in a 30-day window. We know with the landscape of films, in a 30-day window, I can see this film accumulating upwards of like 1.8 billion. I think it doesn't hit 2 billion. Now, of course, re-releases before 3 comes out, Christmas holidays, it'll probably eventually get to 2 billion, but I think I'm looking at like 1.8 on its initial theatrical run, that first wave. What say you?
Well, I honestly think that 2 billion might be possible. It's already, I think some prognosticators or whatever are already predicting that it's going to make, it's going to make $500 million in the opening weekend. So that's in one weekend, which I understand that like opening weekend is like, that's where you make the most money. But if that is in one weekend, I feel very confident because this movie is going to be in theaters for longer than
competition, Griff. Like I don't think the biggest thing that they have to worry about is probably in February, which is Ant-Man Quantumania, which I know you're an Ant-Man fan. That's the next big thing, I think.
Exactly. So I think you're going to get you'll get about 2 months of like no traffic and just like this phenomenon kind of like sweeping the globe again.
You're right, Griff. And there's nothing on television too for the next couple of weeks till The Last of Us, the second week of the top of the year. So you're right, Griff. They got a lot of real estate. Man.
Yeah. And Last of Us is only going to be like what, like a Sunday thing. So it's like
night,
that'll take up the conversation a little bit, but like
so
this thing's gonna do very well, I think.
I gotta agree with you, man. I think it'll be because again, just knowing the landscape of when the first one came out, I think it was literally in theaters for like a whole year before they took it out.
Man. Yeah.
And of course, there was no streaming. There was no the MCU was just getting on its foot. We were in the back end of the trilogy. The Nolan trilogy. We just had The Dark Knight the year before that, so it wasn't like a ton of competition, right? As it would be now. But I think as you just went over, there's really no competition until February. There's really no big shows that's going to be getting all the attention for a lot of people. We'll see, man. And also, too, not to include the inflation. Luckily, we were both able to see it for free with the press access and critic access. But I would imagine a ticket to see this probably upwards of at least $25, and probably in LA, probably upwards of $30 to see it in 3D, IMAX, Adobe. So there's that.
Like 25 or so. Yeah.
So we'll see. And then, of course, it has to be a good film. And if it's going to have that repeat business, which I think it will, Griff. So I'm looking at 1.8, 1.9, but Griff's at 2. Let us know in the chat, guys. What do you think this would make? Whether it's opening weekend, 3 months down the road, I would imagine James Cameron's going to pull a Tom Cruise with the Top Gun Maverick and not do the whole Disney Plus in 45 days. It's probably going to be in theaters minimum 90, I would think.
Yeah.
So let us know in the chat, guys, what you all think that this film will make. And of course, everything that we discussed, let us know how you feel about it. Griff, man, appreciate you, bro. It's always great talking to you about anything, movies, TV shows. And I can't wait to catch up with you at the top of the year to talk about, because Griff, we got a big year ahead of us in 2023, man. But
man.
So much to discuss, man. But outroing this thing out, guys, I'm going to have Griff have the final word of where you can find him and what to expect next on his YouTube channel at FilmSpeak.
Yeah, dude, thanks so much for having me again. Really, I always love hopping on here and doing these things. I don't really do too many like live stuff like this anymore, so it's always a good time. And it's great chatting with you. But yeah, you guys can hit up the FilmSpeak channel. Got a lot of great videos on there. Got a lot of great ones coming your way. Obviously, depending on when this releases, I should have one out for The Way of Water if you want a little bit more in depth for my thoughts. I also have one on the original Avatar and/or Babylon. Got a lot of cool videos coming your way before the end of the year. So definitely head on over to the FilmSpeak channel. Check that out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Griff Schiller. And yeah, thanks again for having me, man. Always a great time.
Awesome. And well, yeah, again, I will be having Griffin's review on Avatar in the description of this video, as well as his link to his YouTube channel, because listen, man, this dude breaks it down like no other, and he covers a variety of stuff: blockbuster, independent films, throwback films, TV shows, everything you can think of, he covers it. So Griff, on behalf of myself and Griffin, you all have been awesome. Again, like, share, comment, subscribe, and we will catch you all on the next video. Take care, everyone. Yeah.